now. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and we will get right into it. But before we start, anyone have anything unique that happened today or this week that you want to share? Or it's just been a regular week for you? No, regular week for everyone? Okay. Can we all see my screen? Yeah, I can see in the chat, Ogechukwu says it's been a regular week. Yeah, it's been a regular week for me too. Actually, not regular, just really busy because it's a short week and tomorrow is a holiday, but we're not complaining. Okay, if you can all see my screen, just give me a thumbs up. Thumbs up, awesome, you can see it. Thank you. Hi, Nathan. I don't think I saw you the last time.
Oh yeah, no, this is my first
Your
Zoom.
first?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to start now. Welcome to the second Bbpa Town Hall. We call it Town Hall because we really just want everyone gathered, especially folks who are interested in applying for the Bbpa Scholarship. So this town hall was put together so we can share information that would support you in your application journey and also give you a platform through which you can ask any question that you have, any questions that will support you putting forth the strongest possible application that you have, that you can put forward. So we had the first one 2 weeks ago, exactly 2 weeks ago, on the 16th, which was great. I saw some of you there and you had your questions and we shared a lot about what the scholarship is about, who Bbpa is, the overview of the scholarship, and we also shared some new scholarships as well as the timelines and all that. We'll touch a little bit about them today, but the priority for today is really to talk about the workshops that we have today. So we have quite a lot scheduled today, and I'm just going to quickly run through the agenda, which is one, I would run quickly through the overview again of the scholarship program and Bbpa, and then we will talk for about 25 minutes on resume writing, just because some part of your application you would you might want to add to your resume, and then there's another piece about financial planning and budgeting, just so that you have an idea how to set that part of your application, set it up for success, as well as entrepreneurship training, which through there you would get some skills and some tips on how to frame your personal story and other parts of your application as well. We put this together because it's pretty mandatory to the scholarship application and to you getting the scholarship eventually, just because these are skills that are going to be very instrumental to your overall development as a person. And at Bbpa, we're very particular about not just community development, but individuals and their development as a whole. So now, if you were here last week, you would know the slide already about who Bbpa is. And Bbpa literally stands for the Black Business and Professional Association, which was founded in 1983. And we are pretty much existing literally just to support businesses, professionals, literally everyone in the Black community through programs that feature education, employment, and economic development as a whole. And in terms of the scholarship, we've been granted scholarship for 36 years plus, and total scholarship to date is in the excess of 1.5 million, and funds donated we've donated scholarships to over 1,500 people, and funds donated to date has been over 5 million. In terms of the structure of the scholarship, which we shared last week, we have like the specialty scholarships, we have future leaders, and then we have the named scholarships or Bbpa legacy. More details about those ones can be seen on the Bbpa website. All right, now we would go into the first workshop, which is resume writing, and I am going to lead this session. And then the other two sessions, we have a very special guest. We are very lucky to have him join us today, and he would facilitate the other two workshops, which is the financial training, the financial and budgeting piece, as well as the entrepreneurship workshop. Now, in terms of a resume, does anyone want to share what they think a resume is that is different from what has been spelled out here? It's okay, you can either raise your hand or put it in the chat. What do you think a resume is, if it's different from what we've spelled out here? You have to raise your hand because I'm sharing screen. I can't see anyone. Or you can put it in the chat. CR, raise your hand. So unmute yourself and just share.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Uju.
Hi.
Yeah, so for the resume, it's a document that really concisely expresses the main aspects of your career. So whether it be your career or your accomplishments or your education, those key details, or even sometimes some resumes have a summary or a description summary. So those key details are sort of documented in a way that's concise, that's readable, that draws the reader's attention to the document, so that the reader has a good sense of what you bring, what your background is when they observe those headings, when they observe the bullet points within those headings. They walk away with a certain impression, with a certain understanding, and that's what the resume means to me.
Awesome, thank you so much. What's your name, CR?
Charmaine.
Charmaine, okay, perfect. Thank you for sharing. And you captured it beautifully. The resume really is, and some people call it the CV. It's used by an individual to present their background, their skills, their capabilities, the work history, the accomplishment, what they bring to the table, to borrow your words. And it can be used for a variety of reasons, but in this part of the world, it is predominantly used to secure employment. So what we're doing today is a twofold thing. So we're supporting you in creating a really robust resume that can be used for a scholarship application, but can also be used to secure new employment whenever you're ready for that. Now, people would usually ask, why is a resume important? Why do we even need that? Why can't I just show up and then I'm interviewed, or just based on how I look or how I dress or how I speak, I'm just given the job or whatever it is that I'm asking for at that point? It's not that simple. So a resume is literally how your brand is spoken of, right? It's an important tool because it shows where you've been, and then gives a sense of where you're going. All right, it's usually like a page or sometimes two, and it displays your skills and your qualities. Now, because it's like a billboard, it speaks for you when you're not in the room. It's always best that your resume shows your best qualities. Your resume shows your top skills and your top qualities, right? So if you're great at swimming, that's great. But if you're not applying for a job that has to do with swimming, you most likely don't want to put that on your resume. You want to put something that is more relevant, but also a top skill, right? But in addition to that, your resume is more than that. It helps both employers and also decision makers make decisions that are in your favor, right? So whether it's helping you get that interview or helping you reach that desired outcome that you set out for in the beginning. And so that's why it's important that the way you structure your resume is done in such a way that it presents you in the best possible light, and shows whoever is interacting with your resume the necessary information that you want them to see, right? You don't want them to miss out on something that is something about you that is phenomenal and would also be helpful in painting you in a great light. Now that we know what a resume is and we know why it's important, now we should talk about what the best practices are. Now, I understand that in this Zoom room, there are probably people who are in different spectrums of their career journey. Some people are just coming out of school, some people are still in school. And so your resume would look different from the next person, right? So there is pretty much no two resumes that are the same. However, there's structures and best practices that you're advised to follow just so that it positions your resume in the best light. Now, one is really to have the most relevant, most up-to-date information about you, your content information. So if you have moved from an address, it makes no sense to put your old city. So not your address. You don't want to put your unit number and your street name. That's not needed. But you want to put, your city. You want to put your email. If you've changed emails or one email is no longer used, you should put your updated one. And then if you have a presence on LinkedIn, which I strongly encourage everybody should, you should have your LinkedIn URL or your link up on your contact information as well, especially if it's customized. If you want to pull out your LinkedIn link, sometimes we see a bunch of numbers and a bunch of alphabets. All the time, it looks really disorganized. So if you can customize it so that it has your name, it's easier for people to just say, okay, this is your LinkedIn profile, and they can easily click on it and see more details about you or what you have done in your past and your career that you couldn't necessarily capture in your one-page CV. So you also want to tailor your resume to the role or to the purpose for which you're sending it to. If in this case, for the scholarship application, you want to tailor your resume to show, for instance, your community stuff you've done in the community, in addition to your past roles and how it's relevant to the questions that you'll be asked in your application profile. And then you want to be able to draw people into your resume and establish that trust in your capabilities, right? So whether you're listing out your education or you're listing out your achievements, you want to be able to pick out the skills that made you achieve those things. So if you're excellent in communication, you want to put that in. If you're excellent in using certain tools like SQL or Tableau or Google Suite, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be huge technical skills. A skill is a skill, right? And skills are used in different parts of either the work stream or nonprofit, wherever it is. So whatever the skill is, if you are great at collaboration, if you're great at influencing people, put those skills in, because those skills are needed at one stage or the other. So you want to be able to carve that properly and highlight that in your resume. Also, when it comes to your achievements or things you have done in the past, you just don't want to write your job role. You want to be able to quantify it. So say you worked in McDonald's and you were serving, you want to be able to say, or say you were in sales, you want to be able to say that you worked did this role and you were able to achieve a, I don't know, 2% increase in their sale in the first 3 months that I joined, something very quantifiable, right? Again, don't be pressured to put things that when you look at it, we'll just think is a lie, but put the truth. Don't be pressured to put huge numbers. As long as what you did is what you did, then put it there. We just want to be able to see that your achievements are measurable. And then so in that, you want to highlight what you did, you want to highlight the impact, you want to highlight the result. Or if you were a team lead in your class, you could say, I led a team of 7 people, and the result is they were all, maybe you were in, your team played soccer, for instance, and you led the team to win a community award or a community championship or something. But the point is, the achievement should be measurable so that the humans in our brains, we like to compartmentalize. So when we can see the result, we can see what you did, we can see the impact, then we can make a truthful judgment about who you are and about your skills. Speaking about skills, you want to be able to list the skills that are relevant to whether your job or to whatever it is that you're applying to. You want to be able to use like a description as a guide. In the case of, say, the scholarship, on the scholarship portal, we list out things that we want to see. Want to see what you have done in the community, want to see what you have achieved in your academics. So you want to be able to use those as a springboard to then add something to your CV that would be relevant. And then you also want to add something that is like a wow human factor to your resume. So as this is especially for people who are relatively brand new to the labor market. So you want to say something that makes you relatable. So if you are, I mentioned something about swimming, you can put that at the tail end of your resume, just because the people who are also looking at your resume are also humans. Who knows, it's somebody who also loves swimming and they can easily relate to that piece about you that is also in your CV. So that is also something to put in mind. Another thing that I would share is in terms of if it's something extra that you have done and you have like a portfolio outside, you can add that link. If you have written a publication, you can add that link somewhere, just because research shows that 87% of respondents to a particular survey said it's desirable to include some extra detail about stuff that you've done in your past. So if, for instance, you're in school and you like to, you also volunteer for, say, your magazine publication department, and it was published, you wrote the copy, you designed the graphics, you can add those links, put them together, and also add that as the extras in your CV as well, especially if it's relevant to what you're applying to. If it's relevant to, say, scholarship, for instance, where we want to see stuff you've done in your academics or in community, these are relevant things that you can add. When it comes to references, I know that with the scholarship, we always would ask for references, but you don't need to put it in your resume, right? There's a section where, we would ask for references. And then again, I mentioned at the beginning that there are people who are like in different stages of their career, and I'm cognizant of that. Some people who, worked for a couple of years and then have gone back to school, postgraduates, and then applying for scholarship. There are also people who are fresh out of high school and getting into undergrad who are also applying for scholarship and would also need to add a CV. So it's a mixed audience. So you want to be able to, if you have a robust history of work experience, you don't want to exhaust everything on and create like a 4-page resume. You want to keep it to like a page or 2. You want to keep the bullets for each role that you've done to 3 or 4, max 5 or 6, but not, honestly, just keep it to under 5. And then if there are gaps in your career, it's also advisable to be transparent about it, and then be able to speak to it. If you are asked, asked to come in for an interview, if you're asked to speak to it, you should be able to say, okay, between 2020 to 2022, I didn't do anything because COVID happened and I just wanted to stay alive. That is very legit because it happened to everybody. Or say between 2018 and 2020, I didn't work because I had a child and I stayed home to take care of my child, and now I'm coming back to school and I'm applying for scholarship, or I'm coming back to the workforce and I'm applying for this job. You should be able to be transparent about it and speak to it honestly as well. And then just simple things about the fonts to use and the size. It's always preferred to just stay consistent, just because that's something that people, especially on the other side, whether HR or the decision makers, are used to seeing. So just keep it there. Also best to share. I see a lot of people share resumes with me in Word documents. That's not advisable, just because you don't know where it's going, and some edits could happen. Maybe one entire paragraph of your CV just mistakenly disappears. So it's always best to share important documentations like this in PDF, just for consistency and yeah. And then I also wanted to add one piece about including your picture. I see a couple of CVs just because they want to stand out. It's always great to have your CV stand out or your resume stand out. But adding your picture is really not necessary, because it just gives room for bias to come in. And so just remove every possible chance and just keep your CV as straight to the point as possible. I think I have a few examples that I can speak to here. I hope it's showing properly. Yes. And so you can see some examples here. This one on that will be my left. That's a picture of this gentleman here. Absolutely non-necessary. However, there are some industries, for instance, if you're applying to tech, for instance, where a certain, they're not very particular on, or maybe the creative industry, not very particular on the outlook, the way it's laid out. But overall, HR professionals would say best to take your picture out of it. It's also always best to have in the top part, like a short blurb about who you are, your profile, basically. So literally just 4 lines, 3 to 4 lines that states, pretty much high level your profile. So what your interests are. Say this person is a web developer and is interested in taking roles as a web developer. You want to highlight a profile that just states maybe how many years you've done this and what you have achieved in the years that you've been a web developer. This is just an example. Or you're fresh out of school and you're looking to just really work in, say, tech sales, and you would just highlight that in your profile, and in 3 or 4 words, just highlight what your, for lack of a better word, ambitions are. And then you highlight your work experience. Again, I advise to keep it under 5 bullets. So this person has kept it under 5 bullets as well. This person has listed their skills, which are predominantly technical skills on this side. Again, don't be pressured to have huge skills, right? As long as your skills are your skills and they're relevant to what you're applying to, then just list them out. And then you want to highlight your education, which is very important as well. Either where you went to school or the courses that you took, trainings that you have taken that are relevant to where you're sending your resume to. You can see that this person added their LinkedIn. This is what I was saying in terms of having your name in your LinkedIn profile. You want to add your email. Some people put their phone number. I generally don't, just because I'm close to my email. And so I would always check the email that I put here. And so put your email, push the city that you're in as well. So that just helps give context to where you are and how quickly you can be reached, in case you ask for an interview or something like that. This is also another example of a resume, and the way it was listed out. And so this person led with listing the skills at the top. There's also the profile on there. You can see the email, the phone number, the city. You can see the LinkedIn. Again, LinkedIn is always there. If you don't have a profile, your advice to just create one. No pressure to make it perfect, but just start from somewhere. And then this person has pretty much been out of work for a little bit, or is maybe just new to getting back into the workforce. And so has led with listing out their capabilities, right? And so there's not much about, where they have worked in the past, but more about, areas of strength and capabilities. And now if you look to the left and you see this work experience here, I just want to point out the example about measuring your achievements here. And this person said, design and establish user-friendly websites, including optimized checkout page, resulting in 25% increase in site traffic, in user clicks, and subsequently 30-something%, can't see, in customer purchases, right? So just seeing what the person did. He designed and established a website, seeing the results, 25% increase and also 35% customer. So quantifying what you have done and showing what you did is very critical when you're listing out what you have done in the past, whether it's in the work. Again, I want to be able to include everyone, whether you have an established career or you're just getting into a career. It doesn't have to be work that has been done in the four walls of an office. It could just be work that you did when you were in high school, working in your athletic team, for instance. Those examples I give, just be able to measure it. The last meeting we had, where we had one of the past scholarship applicants come and share a story. She told you about how she would sit, take her time, and think about little things or even big things that she's done in her past. Just think and see how it's relevant to the questions that are being asked in the scholarship application, and then frame it to tell your story. It's pretty much the same in resume writing. Sit down, think about what you have done in the past, and see how you can pull skills out of those stories and measure the things that you've done, through those stories as well. It could be daunting sometimes, but it's really not. Once you take your time, calm down and create it, I would usually advise to just stick to 1 page instead of 2 pages, then it makes it less daunting. I only have 30 minutes and right now we're at 6 o'clock. So I'm just going to stop here. I think I have exhausted my slides. So we'll stop here for resume writing. And I think we're going to wait and I see a couple of questions come in. I'm thinking, should I answer questions now or should go into the next session? You know what? I'm just going to take 7 minutes.
Hey,
are you here?
Yeah, go ahead and answer the question. I think it makes more sense to address them now. Be efficient as you can, but I will adapt. I will make my time work. Okay. Okay,
awesome. Thank you. So we're going to use just 7 minutes to quickly run through the questions, and then we would go into the next session. Okay, so we have a comment here. I would add relevant aspects of your work, volunteer related experience. Exactly. So again, if you have, depending on where your resume is going, for instance, for the scholarship, you would add, your community work or your volunteer experiences, especially if you're just fresh out of school and you haven't really done a lot in the labor market and the typical corporate workspace. Or even if you had a business, entrepreneurship, you can create a resume for that as well. Again, just be sure to highlight what you have done and measure it so that we can see what you did, the impact and the results, okay? And then someone says you often only have a short amount of time to gain a resume reader's attention and generate interest in your candidacy. The most challenging piece is to condense experience and accomplishments into a few pages. You are spot on. HR people, I like to call them that, or basically decision makers, most times are going through tens and hundreds of CV in a very limited amount of time. So on average, research says it takes 3 to 5 seconds to make up their mind if they should look at your CV or move on to the next. So you really want to put your best foot forward when it comes to your resume. Pretty much is the same thing. Like I said, it's what is speaking for you when you're not in the room. So you really want your resume to be speaking as loudly as possible. Eunice says, would having 5 to 6 bullets under each job be considered detailed for a resume? I was confused on how long of a description to include on my resume. 5 to 6 bullets or less, especially if you have experience in a lot of places. So if you have like four different roles and you're having 5 to 6 for all 4, it will be a lot. So if you have just like one place you've worked, then maybe you can just put 5 or 6 bullets. But if you have like multiple places, you want to keep it to 3 or 4. You can see the example here was 5, and he has 2 places that he has worked. So one is 5, one is 4, which is standard, right? So rule of thumb, just keep the resume to under a page or a page and a half, typically a page, and then just use the experience that are relevant to where your resume is going or where you're applying to or where you're sending your resume to, and then go from there. Would you need to include a cover page to your resume? Do you mean a cover letter? So some people, especially when they're applying to jobs, add cover letters. Research shows that HR folks don't read the cover letter. So if I were you, I would use my CV to tell as best the story about my experience as possible in the short time that I have, and not rely on cover letters, because most often than not, they wouldn't read it. And you can't blame them, right? They're going through hundreds of CVs at the same time. Is it necessary to have a description if you have limited experience coming into the industry? So when you say description, I am imagining that you mean the profile up here. It's always, I like to say that it's necessary because, again, whoever's looking at your resume has 3 to 5 seconds to make up their mind if they're going to continue looking at your resume or not. And the way the brain works, they start from the top left, right to the down to the bottom, the top left, right to the bottom right. So if they're starting from the top, you want to be able to capture the attention from the top here, right? And so in 3 to 4 lines, just use that description to tell your story. I know it's the hardest thing. When I was in high school, the hardest topic for me was summary, because I like to write and I just like to write and write and write. So when you tell me to summarize the 3 sentences, I'm like, just kill me already. So it's like the hardest thing, but you have to do it, right? So use that 3 to 4 lines to frame your story as best as possible. And even if you have limited experience coming into the industry, it really doesn't matter. I would advise you to use that 3 to 4 lines to say what you're looking to achieve as you're coming into the industry, because everybody starts from somewhere, right? The person who has 20 years of experience at some point had 0 and started from somewhere, right? So you're not at a disadvantage at all if you have limited experience. I would just advise you to use that description to describe where you're going or how you intend to excel at that role that you're looking to apply. I'm just gonna use the last 2 minutes, yes, to just rush through a few others. Should you put volunteer work on jobs in a different area of the resume? Again, it depends on how much work experience you have, how much volunteer experience, and where your resume is going to. If I'm going to use the example of the scholarship application, if you've gone through the application, you see that we place importance on community development of what you've done in the community. So yes, put your volunteer work experience in there. I would also then break it down just so that we see what your work experience has been. and then what your volunteer work experience has been. As long as it all fits into that one page, perfect, just so that you're not overburdening whoever is looking at your resume. What are some alternatives for enriching summative points on the different roles when you don't necessarily have quantifiable measures offhand? For example, one who may have worked in fast food helps to support the increase of sales, but does not have specific number to correspond. Okay, I see what you mean. So yeah, that happens when you don't have specific numbers, but then if you can have conversations with say who you were reporting to and say, okay, because I was so good in sales, how did that impact, say, the customer experience? Were people more satisfied? If you go online, for instance, if you're working in McDonald's and you see that most of the reviews have been positive, just based on the work that you've been doing serving there, no one has made lots of complaints, because people would always complain, but as long as the customer experience has improved, you can use that to quantify in some sense how satisfaction index has improved, or how customer experience has improved in the duration of the time through what you did. Or if you don't have specific numbers, you can say, I suggested so and so to the leadership, and it was implemented. So just seeing the result of your suggestion was that it was implemented, that is something that shows that you have skills in influencing leadership decisions. So there are always ways to tell your best story. I hope that answers your question. Okay, the questions keep coming in. So what I'm going to do is we're going to save some of these questions till the end of this. To the end of the entire session. And once we have more time, we will come back to it and answer some of these questions that I haven't touched on. But thank you so much for sending all your questions. Oh my God, I didn't expect it to be this interactive, but thank you. We will get back to the other questions that we didn't touch on for sure. All right, at this point, I'm going to invite esteemed guest, Edmund Del Sol. I've worked with him quite a number of times especially on the scholarship portfolio. He was a judge for one of the scholarship years, and then last year he was the National Scholarship Program chair. And so we have literally a Bbpa celebrity in our midst, and we're so thankful that he made the time to come speak to us about entrepreneurship, as well as financial planning and budgeting, which will be very helpful to you putting up your strong application at the end of this. So I would advise you to take notes, listen attentively, and join me in welcoming Mr. Edmund Del Sol.
Hey, Uju, thank you. Would you keep giving me a control? Because I want to move back and forth across a couple of slides. And I can do it from the slides haven't changed, right?
Yes, no, they haven't changed.
Okay, and I'll do it from here because it gives me better control. I want to go back and forth. And
Okay.
Just share for 2 years, by the way, not one.
Yes.
That was a lot of work, yes.
Yes. I've made you co-host, so it means that you would now share. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay, so yes, you can share now.
Hey, everyone, glad to see you have all joined us. I saw the numbers growing, and I think it's really important that you do. We take these, I say we because I still feel part of the family. We take these town halls very seriously, okay? So let me try to make the time we have as useful for you as possible. Keep myself on track here. By way of bio, I spent a lifetime in technology, and I run my own consulting practice right now. I'm a micropreneur, you might call me. And I also teach at the Centennial College School of Business. So this presentation I'm going to give you on entrepreneurship is really based on my experiences and observations from dealing with people like you. So whatever gaps you may see in there, let's try to close them at the end. And I urge you to use the chat box profusely, okay? I can't continue without just adding two things to Uju's phenomenal presentation. It was excellent. It's not written everywhere, but you'd be amazed how these things hold people back. Two resume mistakes I urge you not to make. spell the company's name properly. And second, proofread your resumes. And the reason I tell you these things is because, going back to the point about 3 seconds to make a decision about you, if you're sending a resume and you can't even be concerned to get our name correctly, why should we even hire you? If you're sending a resume, which is your sales document to speak for you when you're not there, and you can't be bothered to proofread it to make sure it's speaking for you properly, why should we hire you? And I'm telling you, these are real decision points, and your resume gets thrown out like that. Because the thing I tell students is, and everybody I advise on resume, is the #1 job of HR is to get rid of resumes, to cut down the pile. So your #1 job is not to be excluded. Most people think your resume is to get you the job. It will, but your #1 job is not to be excluded, because they're cutting down the pile on the first pass, and they will select somebody on the 3rd or 4th or 5th pass. Okay, I'll leave it at that. You got a great presentation. Okay, so what I hope for you in this entrepreneurship presentation, I wrote it here so I don't get it wrongly, it's my own words, is that whenever you hear an entrepreneurship discussion, that you were able to put yourself in it. That's the one thing I hope for you. And as you will see at the end, it's my perception that a lot of people, especially young people, have the wrong impressions of entrepreneurship. So what I'm going to do is just walk you through an entrepreneurship basic discussion. And if you think some of it is too basic, let's try to close that in the Q&A, because I'm running a workshop next weekend for business people, and it's going to be a far more in-depth workshop. So we can go in depth, but at this point, I'm going to treat you the way I think will help you best based on the experiences I have, okay? And you are seeing my screen, right, Uju?
Yes.
Okay. So let's go to slideshow. And the simple discussion is, what is an entrepreneur? What is entrepreneurship? And as I mentioned, we have the text showing, but that's fine. To help you to better manage your ambitions too, okay? So Uju sent me 5 goals to help you understand your personal strengths, weaknesses, and preferences, and your goals and aspiration. And I highlighted a few things because you'll hear me coming back to the theme of goals, even in this presentation and the following one for financial planning. So to build self-efficacy, learn from your experiences, and demonstrate the ability to move past your obstacles, I think you will do that best when you have a good handle on what it is that you want. Because we all have experiences, and they are not all of the same value based on where we're going. So the word context, like what's happening in your life at the time, is really important. Uju's presentation was about context, which is you're going to apply for something where you need to talk about yourself. Here is how you talk about yourself properly, right? So context is really important. Improve your knowledge of process and your ability to identify and articulate an opportunity. I will come back to the theme of, is this the right opportunity for you, which I think is a central starting point to doing this. And then improve your skill in networking to build your ability to identify stakeholders. That works best when you know what it is that you wish to build. So there are two aspects to networking that you really should keep in mind. It's always good to go out and meet people, but that is not really what networking is about. Networking is about building substantive connections. So if you meet someone and you collect names and then you send people names, send people notes, say, hey, we met, blah, 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 they will look at the note and pretty much, I get this thing that they just toss it aside. Okay, we met, big deal. You want to connect with them in a way that gets them to remember you or see value in you. And it's not this sort of, you scratch my back, I scratch yours thing. It's like enriching their lives, okay? The idea of adding value is a very, very big deal. So keep adding value as a theme for a lot of what you want to do. So I always advise, the big question is, do you know what you want to do? And do you understand the thing that you are tackling? Which, are you seeing the bottom line, or are you seeing the script? What are you seeing or showing on screen?
Yeah, we're seeing the script.
Can you turn it off, please? Because if anybody needs it, they can ask for it. But
I'm trying.
yeah, it's hiding some of the text I have. Yeah, it wasn't.
I don't. I'm trying to see if we was, I think that's from your end. I don't think it's from ours. Let's see. Subtitle settings, yeah. Stop subtitles.
Yeah, can you stop that?
I think that's you doing that.
Disable annotations for others. Can you see the annotations now?
Yeah,
How
I
about
can.
that?
I can still see it.
You can still see the annotations?
Yeah.
Okay, I can't. I'm sorry this is happening. All right, let's go. Sorry about this, guys. And I know we're recording this. So let me do this instead. So you don't need to know everything to start, okay? That is the one piece of advice I want to give you about entrepreneurship. You don't need to know everything to start. Where you are today, you can start working with that. A very often question, a common challenge people have is, well, when we talk entrepreneurship, what exactly do we mean? And I like to define it as the big E versus the small e conversation. So the small e conversation is entrepreneurship is a generic thing. Pretty much every small business owner in the world exhibits entrepreneurship. But very often when we talk about entrepreneurship, we're talking about something else. So I'm going to make the distinction between the small e entrepreneurship, or what we call a small business owner, and the big E. So that we use the terms very loosely, and sometimes that difference can be significant. And very often what we mean is a small business owner. So let's identify what a small business owner is, then go to look at what the quote unquote big time entrepreneur is, and make that distinction, because, and I'll explain why that's important at the end, because you have to pick what's right for you, since these two things actually require very different skill sets. And your resume discussion was about selling yourself and your skills and your accomplishments, and you want to be sure that you're picking the thing that is right for you. I also believe, and I'll get a little bit racial here, that in the Black community, we're sometimes bypassing a lot of opportunity, because we think of entrepreneurship in a somewhat distorted way. And I say that because I'm working with a lot of Black businesses right now, and there are some fundamental gaps in people's understandings of what they should do. So I want to be sure that you guys, as the next generation, you have a very robust understanding, all right? Send your questions to Ujo or post them in the chat, however you wish to do it. So what do let's talk about small business owners. What do small business owners do? Ujo, are you timing me? I had 30 hours on my clock, not 30. I'll just go, so 30, I just like, so we're down to 10 minutes now. Okay, I figured it out.
And the annotations stopped, so that's good.
Yeah, they're gone. So, you start to buy a business to generate income. That is usually a sign that you're a small business owner. You do the usual more than you innovate. So even if you're opening a new salon and you're giving a different hairstyle, or you're opening a new restaurant with a different dish, you're not really innovating, right? Skip the dishes, Uber, DoorDash, that was innovation to the restaurant business, because what they did was they took every restaurant. So, before that, pizza joints used to deliver food, but then skip the dishes, Uber and DoorDash came in, and they turned every restaurant into a delivery joint. That's when we talk innovation, that's the kind of change we're talking about in many cases. Small business owners are not expansion minded. So, 1 to 3, 4, 5, maybe even up to 10 stores, but you're looking at family type chains. Usually once you get about 5, the logistics become a little more complex. So most people who are small business owners kind of just want to keep the numbers down there. And usually when you go above 5, you're also looking at a different type of financing structure. And then you support a business for your lifestyle. If it's lifestyle driven, all of those are examples of small business owners. And it matters, by the way, because that may be what you want. There's nothing wrong with this. And this is kind of why I'm having that discussion. I don't want you to turn your noses down at small business owners, because small business owners, as you will see shortly, are a huge part of the economy, and there's abundant opportunity there. Okay. So who are small business owners? Mom and pop stores. When we talk about convenience stores, we talk about little fashion stores, we talk about salons, dentists and doctors' offices, franchise owners. So you buy a McDonald's. Some companies buy lots of franchises, but most franchises, Tim Hortons, Second Cup, Starbucks, they're owned by franchisees. Good question, dear Sarah. We'll get to you. Digital commerce enablers. I want you guys to think of these because traditionally, the first three I mentioned are the ones we know very well. But I want you to think of digital commerce enablers. You see all these guys online saying, hey, come, let me teach you how to do list building. Let me teach you click to action strategies that you can use to sell, to do advertising on the web for large companies. All of these are examples of modern day small businesses. If you open a store on Shopify, on Etsy, on eBay, you are a small business owner. If you're a TikTok, Facebook, YouTube creator or influencer, that is typically a small business. And I'll show you some stats in a while. So there are various options that you can pursue and you are a small business owner. It helps to recognize yourself as a small business owner. It's very important to recognize that. You want to go on Shopify, great. But don't go on Shopify calling yourself an entrepreneur when you're really a small business owner, because I will get to the skill sets in a while. Many small businesses are mobile. And when I talk about us in the Black community not embracing many opportunities, this is one. This numbers, you'll see at the bottom, I show you where I get my numbers from. Just a thing to do, by the way, when you put information out there, track your sources. As of December 2020, there were almost 230,000 businesses in transportation. And look at the numbers with and without employees. So 160,311 without employees. Most of these are people who own their trucks on the highways of Ontario operating as small businesses. That may be something you want to do. You may have two friends who can drive very well, and you as a future entrepreneur say, hey, my parents have the money, or I can make the money, I've done some gig where I have the money, let me put a 2-truck company on the road. And you can be a small business owner who running 2 trucks, hiring 2 people to drive for you. There's just abundant opportunity out there. So think of all the reach that small business offers. So a couple of fun facts for you. TikTok, if you want to be in TikTok, because many people think this is easy. It's not. And this is why I'm saying I'm putting these things in the small business category so you understand if you want to do them, you are taking on serious work. So TikTok has needed at least 100,000 followers and 100,000 views in the past 30 days to be included in TikTok Creative Fund. So that's the monetization of TikTok. So if you're going to be putting stuff on TikTok and you want to make money off it, the first piece of advice I would give you, take yourself seriously and plan what you're going to do, because TikTok expects you to put some effort into this before they start giving you money. Similarly, YouTube, 1 million subscribers, you will make about $60,000 a year, but you have to maintain that consistency. If you see MKHDB, Marcus Brownlee, if you look at Marcus Brownlee is a hugely successful YouTube creator and influencer. But if you look at Marcus's studio behind him, like you will see, this is a smart, ambitious young man who's actually building from a small business start into something really truly entrepreneurial, right? So whichever path you choose, it is real work, but there's opportunity there. So if you're not a small business owner, then what are you, right? If you're going to call yourself an entrepreneur, and when we talk about entrepreneurs, the big money guys, you're chasing big ideas, big dreams, big ambitions, there are a few things to look for. One, you're an innovator. So I gave you the example of DoorDash before, right? There are many different types of examples that we can pick on where people do things differently. I have a lot of people who come talking to me about Tesla and Elon Musk, and I said, well, Elon Musk's innovation is to get the world to embrace the electric car. We have to look at Tesla like Tesla's not new. GM made an electric car which was perfectly good way back in 1969. That's probably Elon Musk wasn't even born yet. It was a perfectly good electric car. At the time, big oil ran the world, and they told GM, get rid of this thing. And GM got rid of it. Elon Musk came back and told big oil and embraced the electric car. and got the world to embrace it. That is innovative thinking. I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to put it on a pedestal in a different way and get the world to see it. And if you look this, I cut a lot of things out of here, but there's a chart of the Model 3 taking off and just blowing everything out of the water, right? And because of the success he has had, every company in the world is following in his footsteps. All of the big companies that were looking at him and kind of dismissing him now are following in his footsteps. That is transformative change, right? Steve Jobs, back in 2008, I don't know if you guys, some of you are too young to remember that. When Barack Obama became president, they had to change the US government infrastructure so Barack Obama could bring his BlackBerry with him. He was a BlackBerry user. The year before that, Steve Jobs was wrestling to get the iPhone out. And you probably don't remember this. I got phones around me like crazy, but we used to have plastic screens. You may still see things with plastic. And Steve Jobs said, my iPhone is not going to have a plastic screen. I want glass. And everybody told Steve Jobs, you're crazy. And Steve Jobs says, get me glass, or get me people who can get me glass. I have no use for this plastic thing. And sure enough, the iPhone came out in 2007, just at the time Barack Obama was becoming president, with a glass screen, and everyone followed with a glass screen. Now, your innovation doesn't have to be that transformative, but you have to see something different and go after it. They're striving to fulfill an unmet or unserved need. Unmet means it's kind of hanging out there. Unserved means unmet means it's not well addressed. Unserved means it's being neglected, right? So those are the opportunities you look for. They aim to grow the business, usually significantly, and then they expand into other markets. So they can expand into geographic markets, into different demographic markets, serving different people, serving different countries. But these are kind of the markers of entrepreneurs, more than small business owners. And so when you think of entrepreneurs versus small business owners, they really do the same thing. And this could be, by the way, I have a few people in Little Jamaica. I wanted to put one of our people from Little Jamaica, then I didn't have it. These are slides I've used before, so I reuse them. And this guy, by the way, I include, because I teach a lot of Indian students, I include people from different parts of the world. It could be Bill Gates, it could be Oprah, it could be Snoop Dogg, it could be Beyonce and Jay-Z, it could be Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, all of these Black entrepreneurs who are billionaires right now, right? But they do three things. They deliver value to customers, they deliver value to employees, and they deliver value to owners. The big difference is that for the small business owner, the person is one. For the entrepreneur, that is a different cast of owners. And the difference really is in scale. The scale of what you want to do. So if you call yourself an entrepreneur and this is what you talk about, and you're going to hang out with these people, understand the expectation is that you want to do something in scale. And going back to, I think, a point Uja made, sell yourself based on what you have done and what you're capable of. Both things originate, and as you will see here, sorry, one more point, it is by the intersection of these things, value to customers, value to owners, value to employees, you will find the sweet spot of success. You may hang out there delivering value to owners and customers, owners and employees, employees and customers, but it is really at the confluence of these three things that you find true success, sustainable success. So this is why I kept saying there is a difference between the two things. When you look at the business life paths, this is typically what a small business looks like, the green line at the bottom. This slow, steady growth, we're building out, we're getting more clients, we're working on our customer service, keep costs under control and kind of build and stabilize income, right? We have a fairly well-defined entity, be it a restaurant, we launch specials, be it a hair salon, we say, hey, refer your friend, blah, blah, blah. And it really is that well-defined space that we occupy, and the owner typically is the manager, and the owner will hire professional contracts. I have small business people who hire me as a professional support to them, right? That's the life of a small business owner. And again, I will reiterate, it is perfectly okay if that's what you want to do. There's nothing shameful about this. You'll see more numbers in a while. If you do want to go the entrepreneur path, though, It typically involves an idea that starts up with seed funding. I'm actually helping one of my students right now who has a product she wishes to launch. And this is the very problem we're facing, because now she needs to sell in scale. And we're looking at going into sites like Indiegogo and Kickstarter to kind of get some of those initial sales and funding to support the growth of the business, right? So seed funding is the money that kicks you off. Very often, if the idea is going to be big, like Facebook, you go through subsequent phases of funding, like series, you hear the term series A, B, C funding. And then, this kind of keeps the business going while it is building itself. So Facebook soaked up a lot of infrastructure, a lot of costs, a lot of analyst activity before it reached the point where it could launch. And you can then take two paths, which is the IPO, which stands for initial public offering. That's the first time you issue stock. Or you can just sell the thing. It is so well developed, you sell it to somebody who can see value in it. By the way, when you talk about investing, and we'll talk about investing in the next workshop, this is where smart money, you hear the term smart money, this is where smart money comes in. And then the business moves into kind of a professional management structure with corporate ownership, where there is heavy emphasis on shareholders. So if you want to go down that path, you are going to have to borrow money, and you're going to have to address the needs of the people who lend you money, right? So this is the point I was making, that it has huge implications for your skill sets. Understand clearly the difference in paths. Both are good, both are complementary. You can go from the small business path into the entrepreneurship path. When you have some success, you can say, hey, let's build this thing out. I know what I'm doing, right? You don't have to rush down the path and call yourself an entrepreneur and beat yourself over the head to go down the red path when the green one may be better suited to you. So pick the right battle that you want to fight. I'll go through this quickly. Both of them matter because small businesses in Canada are the dominant form of businesses, right? The yellow here is small businesses in Canada. You can't even see the large. It's such a small percentage, 2%. In terms of job creation, small businesses are about 1/3 of the jobs created, but large businesses too are close, about 40%. So although they're small in number, they are huge drivers of employment, huge drivers of employment. And in terms of economic value, you will see that small businesses and large businesses are about equal shares of the economy, right? So life in the small business world is life that is very much worth having. And small businesses tend to dominate in certain areas. I excluded that chart because they can build great strength. They can respond to the market. They can do a lot of these things faster than large businesses can, right? So just to kind of wrap up with some entrepreneurship misconceptions I see. It's about hard work. It's about passion. It's about long hours. It's about wanting to win. We hear these things. I would say all of these things are part and parcel of any good working employee. Uju, right now, I think, Uju, you're working in a corporate, with a corporate employer, and all of those they will expect of you, right? And it matters to you that you look at these things as entry requirements, because you want to be sure that when you are hiring people, you hire people who reflect these things, okay? So what is entrepreneurship? I think it's mostly about what fits you. The pursuit of entrepreneurship should be less about searching for the right thing and more about searching for your right thing. It's there, it's within you, and you have it. So the keys for you to look at are, what are your motivations? What are your skills? Going back to your resume, what are the skills you're putting on there that you can use? What things interest you that you can go back and put the hard work, the passion, the long hours, the wanting to win, the ideas, all behind the thing that interests you. And most important, what are your expectations? If you want to see yourself on the cover of Forbes magazine, great. But getting there is a whole different ballgame than, say, buying, 4 salons running 4 salons in the GTA. Very different things. And you have to be very clear in your mind which of these things fit you. And this is kind of the point I want to leave you on with, which is, the right fit for your business interest is the best path for your entrepreneurial energy. So you don't want to be trying to put yourself the square peg in the round hole, if you hear that expression, because other people are talking about it. You will have a lot more success if you do what fits you. So to wrap this up, you need action. You can start now. And you've heard all the things before: dream big, nothing is impossible, just do it, you know, faster, 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 fail forward. All of these expressions you hear, and like, dim your ears to these things. I would just leave you with two things for entrepreneurship. Action and prepare to learn, right? So find that place which you're passionate about and you want to invest your effort into, act on it, and expect to learn. No one becomes an entrepreneur without that kind of effort and this persistence and growth. So I will kind of leave it at that for this phase of discussion, right? So we have 7 minutes here, Uju. I will take some questions. We left a half hour, I think, for questions at the end. How much will we have in total?
Yeah, so we'd have about a half an hour for questions at the end. Do you want to take questions on this segment now, or do you want us to just go to the last?
So filter the questions, and we can, because I'd like us to have an open discussion at the end. Filter the questions and tell me which ones you think I need to address. Just I saw one here.
Okay. So there's a question here. You mentioned adding value when networking. As a young person, how would you advise us to add value to people that are older than us and in the workplace already?
So I think that's an interesting question, because I teach, we don't call them mechanics anymore. We call them automotive service technicians, guys we used to call mechanics. And most of them are going into the workplace better equipped than the people who are there. And I say the guys who work at Mr. Lube, when they got their jobs, they never saw me teaching them organizational behavior. So they kind of threw it away. And I said, one of the things you have to recognize is that many of these older workers see you come in and they are intimidated by you from the get-go. And they are intimidated by you because it's a world of technology. My wife is upstairs, she comes here. I lived in tech. So for an older guy, I probably know more tech than most young people. But my wife comes here in my office and she has a problem and I need help, and I help her and she goes away. Most older people don't have that convenience at their disposal. They don't have anyone to help them. And so one of the things you can begin to do is to break down barriers to their understanding of the modern world and help them give you insights into behaviors that work in every place. And I always say, never consider anyone stupid. They are smarter differently. So to answer your question, it is, first of all, build relationships, because when people know you, they understand you, they're less intimidated by you. And so just opening that up. And as people, and by the way, when somebody cannot do something, don't offer to help them. Ask if they would like you to help them. You'd be amazed what a difference that makes, like jumping in to help, because you can, and you just essentially showing them how stupid they are. That's the way they interpret it, okay? So two things to try and maybe put that in a concise statement. I always advise everyone to do some marketing learning. And the one important lesson I tell everyone about marketing is to stop thinking inside of your head. This is why I made a note here to you guys. Whatever gaps in my presentation, let's try and close them in the Q&A, because I don't expect this presentation to be perfect by any chance. So number one, think like a marketer. And always ask yourself, as you build relationships, what is it that this person wants most that I can help with? So if you kind of take that mindset and be willing to share your experiences and also be willing to learn from them, the reciprocity is a very, very good tool on which to build relationships, because the person will feel like, hey, I'm adding value to you, therefore I'm smart. I'm reducing it to simple language, but we think in simple terms, okay? I hope this is helping. If not, we can come back and we can come back to that discussion.
Awesome, thank you. We have
What she's talking about, how to get your scholarship in school.
okay. I think someone is muted.
I think we need to mute somebody there.
Yeah, I'm going to try and mute them. But yes, I was going to say that we have one more question, but I'm just gonna keep it till the end. Let's just
Till the end,
go
okay.
on, onto the next segment.
Okay. So let me go into the next one, and I asked to have the next one put after this because I wanted the entrepreneurship discussion out of the way first, so that you could think in terms of, let me see my note here. So again, the overall objective is for you is that I want you to think holistically about finances. And this going back to my point about helping a lot of small businesses, like far too many people have this impression there's a business life, business money life, and a personal money life. The two things bleed into each other. They are distinct, they are separate. You have to file, if you're incorporated, you have to file your corporate papers and so on. But ultimately, the two domains of your financial life come together as one. And by looking at them holistically, and holistically is I'm looking at the big picture to simplify a big word. But to think holistically in terms of finances is important. And yes, once you understand the big picture, then you can begin to separate the, if you want to call it the home life from the business life. I don't use the term, by the way, you hear a lot of people say, it's not business, it's personal. I don't use that expression. I'm sharing with you my views, and I should probably have said that at the front. I always advise people, if I'm giving any sort of advisory, mine is just one voice. I'm not in love with my ideas by any means. I'm offering them to you so you can hear from somebody else and build your inventory. That's one of the things I would advise you to build your inventory of perspectives so that you can now begin to own what you think. Yeah, I heard Del Sol say that, I heard Uju say this, I heard somebody else say that, and think about what you hear. And then you decide from all of the things you've heard, which pieces you want to pick and make your own worldview. So in my worldview, I don't use the expression, it's not business, it's personal, or it's personal, not business, because to me, there is nothing more personal than business. So we don't get up on a winter morning at 5 o'clock, drive to clean a car in freezing cold, drive to a train station, huddling, buying coffee, go sit on a train of people we don't know, going to an office in the dark, because it's not personal. No, it is very personal. That's why we do that, right? We don't start a business where we might potentially lose our home, get divorced, our children, not see our children because it's not personal. No, it is very personal. So business and your business life and your personal life are intricately tied. I use the term business life and home life. And increasingly for many of us, the business life and the home life kind of fuse into each other, and we have to now work at distinguishing them. So that's just my perspective. You can accept or reject it. So in this space, I need to tell you before I go in, and by the way, this is important. When you hear people talking about finance and taxes and legal matters, make sure they are qualified to do it. If this here, I'm telling you, and I want you to be aware of this. So part of your learning here is when you listen to the people telling you things about finances and legal and taxes, make sure they're qualified to do it. So I need to read this outright. I, Edmund Del Sol, I'm not a registered investment, legal, or tax advisor, or a broker-dealer. All financial and investment opinions that I express are based on personal research and experience and are intended as general and educational material only and should not be taken as financial advice. Okay? Very important that from here on, you take the information I give you and parse it and speak with somebody who's more qualified than I and say, okay, here's some things he said, they may be true, they may not be true. Well, let me check it out with you as a qualified professional and then act upon it. Again, the same question I posed the first time. Remember, always ask, do I understand the thing I'm tackling? And one of the most, it's kind of weird. I did engineering as my undergrad, we used to call University of Western Ontario, but it's Western in London right now. And I think, hands down by far, the smartest prof I had there was a thermodynamics teacher, a Russian emigre at the time when the Soviet Union broke up. Lots of Russians were flooding over. They're flooding again with Putin doing his nonsense. And his advice was the fundamentals, always the fundamentals. Because when you understand the fundamentals of a topic, you cannot go wrong, period. You cannot go wrong. And this is why, none of you guys are aware, but you need to be aware of these people. A whole bunch of people pick up every year and they go to Omaha, Nebraska to listen to Warren Buffett, one of the richest men in the world. And it's to hear Buffett's insights, and you'd be amazed how much of Warren Buffett's insights are about very fundamental things. He doesn't always get everything right, but he has so much of the fundamentals right that he is generally ahead of the pack by far. And if you look at his company, a holding company, Berkshire Hathaway, you will see that Warren Buffett is very much worth listening to. So what is financial planning? And I give you a definition here. So note some key things. Documenting the person or business's current financial position. The same things apply to both personal and business. Identifying financial goals and how you will achieve those goals. Okay. And I underline at the bottom that the financial plan is a document. You guys, you can't make a financial plan and keep it in your head, right? A couple of reasons why you want to document things. First, by writing it down, you give it meaning, you give it structure, and you're able to post it where you can see it. The act of writing itself is a powerful mental trigger. A really useful, and of course, it keeps you on track. It's a plan, it's a guide. But one of the really important things about a plan is that you can look at the plan after a certain period and see what's working and what's not working. And both of those pieces of information are hugely valuable. What's working shows you what is in place and is correct and is worth expanding on. Like you build upon it. Hey, if this is working, maybe I should do more. And if this is not working, why is it not working? So you address it. And if the reasons you address it don't fix it, stop doing it, right? This is where the Einstein expression, continuing to do the same thing and expecting a different result is insanity. So if it's not working, it's not working. Stop doing it and stop investing energy in something which is not productive. So documenting your stuff is very important. Build the discipline to document your stuff. So on the personal side, when we talk about financial planning, and I meant to put another box there, I forgot to do it, but I'll just bold this. There is wealth preservation, there is financial oversight, there is net worth, there is tax management, and there's succession. Very few people at all, and including many of the businesses I talk with, even know what succession means. And succession, in very blunt and brutal terms, we're all going to get old and die. And if we get old and die and we leave our money just hanging out there without a will, without a plan of transfer, the taxman is going to come and say, thank you very much. I like it. I'll take it. Right? You want to be sure you take care of your money so that when you leave the face of the earth, or if you become, you can't take care of yourself, somebody else can take care of your money. And if you leave, then your money goes to the people who should get it. And you structure it in such a way that you maximize your tax benefits. A lot of people get taxes wrong. They're busy hiding money from the tax man, which is just criminal behavior. And I advise you not to do that. You want to use the tax code, the provisions in the tax code to your fullest advantage. That's kind of what you want to do. And so succession is planning that process very early. Right now, you're not too young to start thinking of your succession plan. Because if you expect to make money, when you get to be old, you will have a substantial amount of money. And my question to you is, okay, what's going to happen to it, right? You can't make it all happen at one instant. But most of the time we talk about financial planning, we're talking about this here, net worth, cash management, planning, and personal risk. That's a very limited slice. So from now on, when you talk about financial planning, I'd like you to think of all of these things. Wealth preservation, right now we are in a highly inflationary period. And I say a simple way to think of inflation, and we're not going to go into the math and the economics of it, but inflation destroys money. That's all inflation does. It actually destroys money. If you have $100 at the start of the year and you have 10% inflation, at the end of the year, your $100 can buy only 90% of what it could buy at the start of the year. At the start of the year, you could get 100% of what you could buy. At the end of the year, you can buy only 90%. Inflation has destroyed 10% of your money. So wealth preservation is really a big deal because inflation is going to spike. And over time, if you don't take care of it, your money evaporates, right? Personal financial planning. Business financial planning. it's really looking at your company's strategic plan. What does the company want to do? And so when you know what your company wants to do, you can you get them by asking these questions. Do I need to expand? Do I need more equipment, hire people? What are the new resources I need in terms of, we spoke a while ago, your company can go into different demographics and so on, right? Very important. How will my plan affect the cash flow? This is a discussion we don't have often enough, and we'll come to that shortly. Will I need financing? If yes, how much? Very often you will need financing. I'm helping some people right now, and I'm saying, okay, here's how much money you need for financing, but I'm telling others you don't need financing. Like if you're going to get a loan that you don't need, all you're doing is you're incurring cost on yourself. So make sure you know what financing you need, why, and how you're going to get back, how you're going to pay it back, right? And your financial impact for the next 12 to 36 months. When you do financial planning, you do it like short term is 3 to 6 months, medium term a year, long term is 3 to 5 years, right? Those are kind of rough windows. It varies by businesses, but generally that's what you're looking at. And you kind of have to have that view looking forward, because you heard the old expression, failing to plan is planning to fail. And we say it as a cliche, but that's why. If you can't address any of these questions here, if you can't plan to address any of these questions, how can you expect to succeed, right? It's a very simple question. So this is why the two things, this is why it matters. So bringing the two together now, as what's the value of financial planning? So with a good personal or business plan, you will save the money that you need to cover your monthly expenses, whether it's business expenses or home expenses or both. Better manage your money and build wealth. Like wealth building is a time-consuming task in many cases. Yeah, you could launch a product and it could, blow up, and you could be selling millions in a year. But go back and look at the proof. Like, where are those companies? Amazon is dominant right now, but Jeff Bezos launched Amazon, I think in 79. And for about 15 years, the people who invested, going back to my discussion about Series ABC funding, when we were talking about entrepreneurship, the people who invested in Amazon were like, Bezos, what the heck did we give you our money for, right? But he was building out Amazon. And then Amazon, as I showed you on that crest, reached that point where it was in a dominant position, and Amazon has just been making money like crazy right now, right? So that process can take time. When things are low, when your business profits are low, or your business is kind of in retrenchment, or maybe it's economy or pandemic, you use invested and safe amount. And a safe amount basically is, I can afford to spend this without damaging myself financially. A lot of us don't have the option to do that, I understand, but I'm saying part of having that option is planning your life so that you give yourself that option, right? Give yourself the option of safe funds so that you can have a cushion under you. When you hear those terms, that's what they mean. And a very important thing I'd like all of us to consider, because banks are not friendly to us, Black people, period. We still are not equal citizens in the financial industry, is building your thing to bootstrap your business. And bootstrap means, hey, I have that safe money I can use to invest in my business and make it grow. And then the beauty of that is you retain full control of your business. Because if you go the entrepreneurship path, you're borrowing money from people, and you'd better be prepared to answer to them for their money. If you can bootstrap yourself, you own everything and you maintain control. There are pros and cons to both, but bootstrapping yourself is a great thing to do. So where do you start today? I've given you two charts for a business. I would say first thing is to always look at income and debt. Like if there's no money coming in, there's a problem. Like you have to have money coming in to begin with, right? So what income do you have? What debt do you have? And the second thing I will always go to is goals. Goals. Guys, goals are critical. And I take people through a long discussion on writing SMART goals. You hear about SMART goals all the time. And I think we say SMART goals as a cliche. Like really writing good SMART goals is a very disciplined thing. We don't have the time to do it today. So what is the income and debt, and what are your business goals? And then you can address all these things. And you will see a term up here, exit strategy, which many people don't think about, right? Exit strategy, estate, sell, divorce, death. All of these things are realities in business. And an exit strategy basically is, what do I want to do with this business? And I ask a lot of small business owners, I say, what's your exit strategy? You know, sometimes we just don't want to do this anymore. I've done this for a long time. I was a very successful telecoms manager. I was the director of my family and kids were down in Brazil. And that was during the dot-com crash. My kids were in a private school with the wealthiest of Brazilians. The only Brazilians you didn't meet, they were the ones who could afford to go to school in Switzerland, right? And I just remember saying, I don't want to do tech anymore. I don't want to do telecoms anymore. I don't. I didn't want to do it. I got out of the field. I went into information technology, working with a company called Sun Microsystems. But it doesn't matter what you do, you have to prepare for the opportunity that you may not want to do it anymore. That's what your exit strategy is. So all of these pieces here need to be addressed for a business, and I would say 1 and 2. Your situation today is more like this one, okay? Where do you start today on a personal level? And at the heart of it is your net worth. And this is really what you're looking to build, your net worth today, and you're probably going to have to pay for education, but that should not stop you. Education will fall into one of these expense categories here, and I've identified it. So what are your goals? Again, what are your goals? What's your income? If there's no income, you're not going to build a net worth, right? It's like trying to plant a garden without seeds of plants. All you will end up with is soil. Your debts. And I did not include a portion here about ambient debt, but right now, pay later and installment payments are huge. And you can put those things in your credit cards, and it will say you can pay this off in 4 or 5 or 6 installments. And it's so easy that we're acquiring debt. And this is why I call it ambient. Ambient means it just hangs in the air. This is why we're acquiring so much debt. And it's the fastest growing part of debt right now. So you want to be careful about that. And with your income minus your debts, because you have to pay them, so like it's a choice, you have to pay them, you can get a basic cash flow. And this cash flow here should strongly influence your spending and income. So if that cash flow is not, and I really meant to put basic spending here in this one, I should have said basic spending, right? Just add this right now. If your cash flow is not enough for your basic spending, then it probably means you're defaulting on your debt. So you really have to get these 4 things in order very, very quickly, so that you now can go into major expenses like your car, appliances, vacations, education, and you can plan for retirement, which includes thinking of what lifestyle do I want to have in retirement? Where do I want to retire? You don't plan retirement at the last minute. You plan retirement today, where you are. And a point I meant to make here, and I skipped, was savings and investment. One of the best things you can do for yourself today is to deduct your savings payment from your income right off the bat. Take it off. Okay. If you can build that discipline today, this is essentially looking for retirement today. It seems weird and odd. And again, I said, I'm not a financial advisor, but I'm telling you this, it works. If you can start that process today, you will be acting on one of the pieces of wisdom that Warren Buffett gave, which is one of the best things ever invented is compound investing. So $20,000 invested at 20 years old is massively more beneficial than $20,000 invested at 40 years old, which is still massively more important than $20,000 invested at 55 years old. So the sooner you can invest that money, the better off you will be. So that's a personal view. To help you get there, one of the things I like to offer are free tools. So all of us have Android phones. All of you should know how to go to the Google Play Store, go in there and put financial planning, and you will get some free tools. You can buy better ones, but I always urge, like, start with some cheap ones. Now, when you buy a free tool, chances are they're using your information, just so you know that. If you get something free, then you are the product. They're using your information for their own purposes. But look for the ones, there are a whole bunch of credible ones. Stay away from the skeezy ones. And if you're uncomfortable, buy a cheap one. You know, $10 a year for an app is nothing. I urge you to buy good apps. So for this kind of activity here, you should be quite willing to spend $20, $30 on an app, because it is that important. Same thing on the App Store. Go in there, tap the icon, and look for financial planning. Chances are, in the App Store, you will get, I shouldn't say better apps, but you're more likely to pay for them, right? So you'll get better vetted apps, and you will pay for them. You can do the same thing in the Windows Store. So go to the start button, go to the Windows Store, type financial planning, and I could find a couple of them. So there are free tools available to you right now. I always tell everyone, these things are not just phones anymore. They are very, very powerful life management computing stations. Don't look at this as a phone anymore, right? I think I have an older iPhone 7 here. I teach a course to seniors in technology, and I have this devices I buy. And I think this thing has more power, more computing power in it than the Apollo 11, which went to the moon with Neil Armstrong and those guys. I think that somewhere. So I think they said the iPhone 6, but this is a 7, so it should. More computing power than it took to get men on the moon the first time. We have very, very powerful tools at our disposal, and we should be using them to do these critically important things in our lives. So I will leave you with a parting quote, and I like it because it's one of the first things I saw and I started my entrepreneurial journey. To know and not do is not to know. Education without action is entertainment. So whether you take the entrepreneurial action discussion we had and the financial planning opinions I shared with you, either way, the important thing for you to do right now is to act on them and make them your own. Okay? That's it from me, Uju. We're now into full Q&A.
Thank you so much. This has been very, very insightful. I saw a couple of people. Thank you for that applause. Yes, I feel like we should all be giving a round of applause right now. I saw a couple of people's headbands taking notes. I was taking note myself. So I'm glad that everyone, found this very, very, very useful. And not just for your future after now, but also even for your scholarship application. So especially when I think about the entrepreneurial, the entrepreneurship workshop, the workshop before this one, just thinking about what your goals are and how you can frame that, what your dreams are, how you can frame that into your personal statement or your essays, and how eventually the scholarship that you could potentially get would lead up to you achieving all of these goals eventually, right? So nothing exists in a vacuum. They are all connected, right? Okay, so now we have a couple of minutes. We're just going to go into Q&A. We're going to attend to some of the questions that we couldn't get to in the first few workshops. So I'm just going to read out this one. I think this was for the entrepreneurship workshop. It says, does innovation depend on the current environment? As you mentioned, the first electric car was not accepted in 1969, but is in high demand in our current society. As breakthrough ideas would still remain irrelevant in the wrong environment. If so, how would you suggest we analyze our environment, and how do we know if our idea will be accepted by the public despite its efficiency? That's a great question.
I think so too. It made me laugh. I'll give you two interesting quotes. A guy by the name of Bill Gates, you probably know who he is. Bill Gates famously said, and it's now a joke, he can laugh at it. I have no idea why anybody would need more than 640K on a computer. You guys probably don't remember the time. That's back in the time of a Windows XT. You had a big bulky machine on, and Gates said like 640K. Why would anybody need more than that, right? Where's my Galaxy here? I have 512 gigabytes of information on that Galaxy phone. So Bill Gates got it wrong completely. Steve Jobs said this thing is coming and it's going to transform the world. It's going to be, people are going to build cities around it. It's going to be bigger than the computer, bigger than the internet. Anybody knows what Steve Jobs was talking about? The Segway scooter. It was not even close, right? So that's why I laugh about your question. You can get this so wrong. The thing is, market, and I'm going back to marketing. An essential part of marketing is prototyping, right? A friend and I started a company in 2017. We built a tool. We incorporated ourselves, by the way, to liability and finances, things I didn't even talk about here. And we built this device for the green bins, because the green bins are very heavy. So you could hook a green bin and drive it out. And we had a lot of trouble building it. And while we were building it and trying to go into China and looking at manufacturing companies and stuff, we ended up building our own machinery and building it. The city of Toronto said, by the way, we're getting rid of all green bins. So the thing we were building to sell it to Toronto, we had a plan to sell it maybe, somewhere between $1.5 to just under $3 million. Poof, the market disappeared, right? And we'd spent about 10 grand. So that was money not wasted, but an entrepreneurial venture that didn't pay off. So I strongly urge you to address the question you've raised. It's a critical one. There is something called the window of opportunity. So the Tesla was too early. The environment was not ready for the Tesla. You see the space travel, Jeff Bezos and Blue Horizon, Richard Branson, where people going to space. They are the very, very early samplers. There's something called the chasm. I mean, it's a more complex marketing story, like crossing the chasm, where a whole bunch of ideas that look appealing never jump into the mass market, right? That's the chasm they talk about, where a whole bunch of companies die. And this is where prototyping, we now have crowdsourcing and crowdfunding. Those things still don't relieve you of the problem of making sure you cross the chasm. So my advice to you is to be the best marketer you can be and use prototyping to the fullest abilities that you can, and be sure that there is actually a market need. A market need is different from people saying, oh, this is cool and I like it. The thing you want is, and this kind of gets into a marketing discussion of, segmentation types and why behavioral segmentation, behavioral marketing is so important. How many people are willing to pull out their wallets and say, here's my credit card, I will buy one of these things. That's what you wanted to look for, right? So the issue you raise, it's not going to go away. It's you building the skills to work with that and verify that there really is market need to justify the thing you want before investing large sums in it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was also going to add to, in addition to prototyping, is just doing a ton of research. Like Edmund said, you can't 100% know that your idea would be, get into mass adoption. But if you can do research, if you can get a pulse on what the market is interested in. So things like survey, having, depending on what the product is, having free prototype that is sent into the market for people to test, and then gathering feedback, involving people in like pricing, for instance, and then getting a sense of what, the market is interested in. That could reduce the margin of uncertainty to some extent. However, you're never really 100% certain that your idea would be accepted with open arms once you launch.
Yeah.
Also,
just to add, I noticed Eunice, looking at Eunice's comment. Eunice, I would caution you about good judgment and critical mind. I think these are essential skills to manage people, to test an idea, to refine the idea. But I will give you, I didn't tell you this, but I was the global marketing manager for a $105 million portfolio. And then I did that well enough, I was given product ownership of the originating or $80 million portfolio. And I can tell you the one hard lesson you should never forget is let the market guide you, right? To this day, when I hear people saying, oh, it's a cool idea, a red flag goes up in my mind. Like I've met a lot of smart people who've done a lot of dumb crap and burdened up a lot of people's cash. So for your own sake, I would urge you just to be very, very market-minded.
Yes, absolutely. Another question, I think this is related to your comment about maybe using free apps and then getting your personal information in exchange. And this question says, you mentioned our information being used. Did you mean for marketing purposes, or it's unavoidable once we're using the free app? Would you suggest that we don't impute personal information in financial apps like linking bank accounts for financial planning tools?
As a standard practice, don't share information that you don't need to share. Just a basic practice, okay? However, if you want to use a free tool, they will ask you for certain information. For example, the Guardian newspaper, the Guardian is kind of more left-leaning than my own orientation, but I think they're a very good paper. And I used to kind of, give the Guardian full access to what it wanted. And then I just one day decided to look at the sources, and I realized the Guardian has one of the longest list of tracking softwares buried inside of it. And ever since that day, I just stopped. I don't give the Guardian, I read whatever free things I can, and I don't give them access. It's just way too much. So every time you give people information, they will take the information for marketing purposes and for other purposes as they may choose, which is hidden in fine print. Now, Google, Facebook, Apple, all of them do that. And even if, like in Google's case, even if you're paying Google, it will still do that. But routinely, when you use a free tool, the reason they're giving you the free tool is because they're monetizing the information about you. Just take that as granted. And if you are comfortable with the level of information you're giving them, great. If you're not comfortable with the level of information you're giving them, don't do it, but just know that they are monetizing your information.
Awesome. The last question, actually we have a few more that has to do with resume, but the last question on this segment is, and I think I still see some coming in. You mentioned keeping track through documentation. As a person in tech, do you find writing by paper or digital more effective?
I say do both. And here's the if you look at me, I have a lot of pen and paper around me. The brain works differently when we write versus when we write with paper. Okay.
Yeah.
And also paper is almost spontaneous. And here's one of the things I tell a lot of people, especially if you're dealing with higher ups. I as a product manager myself, the man I put at the top of all product managers is Steve Jobs. I hold Steve Jobs as the pinnacle of product management. But I'm also, I think, a fairly advanced technologist, and I can say, not everything Steve Jobs did made sense. And one of the beauties that Steve Jobs gave us is glass screens. When we are typing on glass screens, our whole brain absorption process is different. You cannot be, you can test it, by the way. You cannot have a structured, meaningful conversation with somebody and be typing on a screen, because the keyboard on the glass screen is not the same as a physical keyboard. To use a physical keyboard, we use what's called autonomous intelligence. Our fingertips, we have distributed intelligence in our bodies. A lot of things people don't know. We have intelligence in our brains, in our kidneys, in our gut, in our fingertips. And so our fingertips can take over and be typing, or our hands can be writing while we're looking at you, and we are fully engaged mentally because we've dispersed intelligence. You cannot do this with a phone. And if you're telling me something, I have to say, okay, stop, and then type it and look up at you and stop. And if you're doing this with a higher up, it will drive them insane, and you will mark yourself as a nuisance that they don't want to deal with. So for that reason, I say make note-taking with paper a part of your life, period. When you go to a meeting and you sit around the table, if somebody says something and you go into your phone and you start typing it, you're losing track of the conversation. You're much better off writing with paper. And a lot of people who know this in senior positions will be annoyed with you, right? So little things like this matter. And but I do it. I have a Galaxy Tab. I'm a tech geek. I'm a geek, and part of why I bought this is because I can write on a glass screen and then get converted to digital notes. So there are huge efficiencies to taking notes digitally. But also include paper in your life, even if you use it for critical occasions, like when you have meetings with seniors or you have fast-paced things going on, and then you can go back and and the other beauty of taking a paper is that you can just read it into like you can take this and just read into an iPhone and convert it to a digital text, and the iPhone will do that for you very well. I think better than any other device, by the way. And I'm not an iPhone user. I'll give iPhone credit where it deserves credit. I hope again, I'm kind of going in a few directions, but I hope it answers your questions.
Awesome, thank you. We just have one more question on resume. Oh, actually, I think one more just came in. on this segment, and it says, what would you say are the benefits and disadvantages of being an independent contractor, particularly as it relates to tax purposes and take-home income?
Is it Charlene or Colleen? What's the name? That is a
Oh,
question about.
hi.
Hi,
Yes, my name is Charmaine. I
Charmaine.
was
Sorry.
asking that question more as it relates to, so sometimes sometimes if someone cannot necessarily or is not yet in the position to own their own business, sometimes they can serve as an independent contractor for an organization. And so one of my, and then you attract a certain clientele, and then once the clientele gets, and this is more so for the service industry, and then once the clientele gets used to you, you can open up your own organization at some point. Once you've developed the skill set, once you've developed the backing and so forth, and the experience and maybe even the name. And so my question is, if you were to sort of serve as an independent contractor for a particular organization, what are some considerations that you should keep in mind as it relates to income that you may have to pay for tax purposes and then tax take-home income?
Okay, so I will address your question, but I never say you're wrong. I just challenge some things people say. I don't think your business structure, be it a sole proprietorship, a partnership, or a corporation, necessarily matters to your employer, right? And it will not help them. It's a longer discussion about reasons why people hire you, but I don't think that's going to be one of them, with a couple of exceptions. People like me used to teach as contract faculty, and the process was abused because, contractors coming with all different rates and cost structures, and the government of Ontario said, stop this. Every one of those contractors comes in as faculty, contract faculty, on a set pay scale, end this mess, right? So there's some cases where things get out of hand and employers will dictate, but other than that, it's not much of an issue. So the choice of really, we don't have sometimes I hear people talking about limited liability corporations in Canada. I don't know if you know what that is, but I would say put it aside. It's something in the US. We don't have LLCs in Canada. Generally, it's a choice of incorporation or partnership, right? If you're doing any work where you need to protect yourself, you want liability coverage, I would say absolutely incorporate yourself. That should take precedence over taxes, because you don't want your life to be completely turned upside down by legal exposure that just essentially obliterates whatever you've done. So liability must be a big factor. If there is no liability issue, then a sole proprietorship is cost efficient. You can $60 to get registered. And I would say the next thing you do is, once you register yourself as a business, present yourself as a business and document your stuff thoroughly. It is by such documentation you build the basis for taxable expenses. Okay. And then that is kind of one of the easy advantages you have as a sole proprietorship. If you want to go to a corporation, I can think about that, because a corporation is more expensive. You have to have a board of directors. You have to report to the corporation. If you make money, you're paying at the corporate level. And if you are your own owner, then you're probably going to be paying yourself dividends, and you may pay on that. And then you have to corporate income, you pay tax on this as a person. So a corporation is a more complex structure. In most cases, a sole proprietorship will do. But once you register yourself as a sole proprietorship, present yourself as a business to your employer, and then manage yourself as a business by documenting thoroughly everything you've done, so you can get the maximum tax benefits allowed to you. I know that addressed the question.
Fascinating. Yes, that's really fascinating. I really appreciate that. So my background, I'm a registered social worker. And so I have the option of either working with an organization where I would be employed as an employee, or I can work with an organization as an independent contractor, which means I would be able to set my rates. But then I also have to take into consideration, is it worth it? Because as an independent contractor, you may not have all of the benefits, but you can set your rates. And with setting your rates, it means you'll be able to bring home more income. But then how much of that would be taxed? And so in terms of weighing the two, is one more advantageous? Is it something that could be done
I'm inclined to
simultaneously?
think that going as a contractor will be more financially beneficial. The one caveat I would add to that is, if you're an employee, does that give you any sort of job security? And I always tell people there's no job security anymore. But as an employee, you know, there's some benefits you will get. So what's the value of the benefits, and what's the value of job security? Those are the two things I would consider on the employee side. But it's my inclination that going in as a contractor will probably be more financially beneficial to you ultimately. That's my rough, finger to the wind guess.
And then even if you were to sort of I like the idea of the incorporated, sort of presenting yourself as an incorporated individual to the employee. That was interesting. Thank you.
Well, I would say a registered business. A registered business can be a sole proprietorship or a corporation. So you can choose either form of business. But if you are a business, present yourself as a business. And all of the things you can do as a sole proprietorship, you can do as a corporation once you're a registered business. It's how the CRA sees you. And another thing to add is, if your earnings are not over 32,000, and that's kind of a low figure. If your earnings are not over 32,000, then you don't have you don't have to report HST to the CRA. So that's kind of, to me, a minor issue, because I think I tell most people, if you're getting into business, you want to be making more than $32,000 anyway, right? So either type of business will allow you to address your employer as a business.
Thank you so much for your time, Edmund. I'm respectful of other people who may have questions. So thank you for your time. Very insightful answer. And I really have enjoyed your presentation.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Awesome. We have one more question and then we'll wrap up the session today. We literally have 7 minutes and I want to keep us all timely. This question says, what advice do you have for someone who has a lot of experience in his career field, as well as recognized for tons of engagement in the service of the community / volunteer work in a way that aligns with the career which he or she intends to pursue? That's a great question. As our final question, I'm going to say, just highlight the relevant experience. Highlight the experience that are relevant to where you're going. So either the job you're applying to or wherever you're sending your resume to. For instance, I'm going to use myself as an example. I have been working since I was 13 in my father's company. However, you will not see me, on my resume, you won't see that job history, even though I have a ton of experience, just because it's not relevant, right, to what I'm applying to, and it was a long time ago. So I would say select the experiences that are that your best experiences, your best community work that created, that you felt like you grew a lot from, and you also made a lot of impact in the volunteer work or in the job that you did, and then put them in the resume. Also put the most relevant ones. So you don't want to go all the way back 10 years ago when you were, 13 or 12 working, just because it most likely won't be relevant to what you're applying to. So I would say just pick out the top. Again, you also want to fit your experiences in that one page or a page and a half. So highlight the ones that, speak the best of you, that put your best foot forward. And then whether it's the career one or your volunteer work, and then tell your story in the best way possible. And I'm sure your resume would speak very highly of you when you send it across. But again, you don't have to put all your resume, all your experience. That's a mistake I see a lot of people making. They feel like the more experience they put on their resume, the more attractive it is. And that's not necessarily so. It's the more relevant your experience is, the better your resume would work for you. So thank you everyone for today. We have literally just 4 minutes, and I'm just going to go on to Edmund, if you don't mind skipping to the last couple of slides, just so that I give a high level overview again of the process for our okay, I think it's the slides prior to this on the steps for your application. I want to be able to remind you your deadline is July 18th. You want to make sure that you have, okay, let me just share my screen just so that we see what I'm saying. I always like to visually represent what, okay. Can we all see my screen? Just want to go to the last couple of slides. Yes, so I shared this at the last training, which was 2 weeks ago, but just for the benefit of those who are joining for the first time, please keep these dates top of mind. The next town hall, which will be the final one before the scholarship portal closes, is July 7th. Application will close July 18th. So please take your time. Now is if you haven't sent, say, a request for reference letter, please do so now. If you haven't completed your application, start, putting the finishing touches together, because July 18th will come sooner than you think. So do your best to, solidify your application and complete everything before this deadline comes, because we really want to avoid those last minute applications, because I don't know, you don't know how technology could work. You might just have, I don't know, internet issues. So don't keep everything to the last minute, just so that we don't have a lot of traffic on the site and then you have issues. We're positive that you won't have that issue in this case, but still better safe than sorry. Again, the other dates that you should have top of mind is the application reviews and selection will happen between late July and August, and then we'll finally announce the recipients of these scholarships by September, and we would have an in-person celebration in September/early October as well. Again, for your application, you want to highlight your personal details as accurate as possible. Upload your transcript. If you haven't made requests for that from your schools, now is a great time to do it. I am positive that all the information that was shared today would be instrumental in telling your person or creating a really robust personal statement that tells your story in the best way possible. So whether it's an idea that you have to create the next innovative, I don't know, just whatever the idea is, you can put that in your personal statement. I believe that the insight we've gained from financial planning would also help you highlight what your expenses are, what you're expecting to receive in terms of income for the next year, so that you can see what the variance is. And you can say, okay, this is where my financial need is. And you can tell that story as well. Now is a good time to reach out to your reference. Think through who would speak highly of you. Think through who's the best person to tell your story. So if it's someone in your school who has a personal relationship with you, or someone in your community, or if you're an athlete, someone who you've worked with, your coach or something, reach out to them today and ask them for a reference. Remember the tip we shared last time where we said you can make the job easier for them and highlight what you want them to touch on in their letter. So it's easier for them to draft that letter for you. Again, please don't forget the application deadline is July 18th. We're looking forward to receiving all of your applications. I see them come in. I see most of them have not been completed. They have been started already, but please take time to complete it. Upload the relevant document, your resume, everything that would really make your application stand out. And if you have any further questions, please come back and join us on July 7th. We'll be here again to share more information and answer any questions that you have. But till then, thanks for joining us today, and I hope you had a good time. Special thank you to Edmund for facilitating our workshops today. We appreciate you. We definitely couldn't repay you for all the great things you've been doing for Bbpa and also the scholarship program. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And everyone, do you want to come off mute and say thank you, Edmund?
Thank you,
Thank you,
Edmund.
Edmund.
Awesome.
Thank you.
I love it. All right. So until the next one, I hope you guys enjoy your long holiday. Rest, but also use some days to work on your application. Work on your application. Don't leave it to the last
Sorry, I have a
minute.
question.
Okay. Okay, Chiku, what's your question?
I just wanted to know, does your reference need to sign the letter they give you?
If they need to sign it, yes.
Yes.
If they can even have a letterhead. I know a couple of people have sent reference letters with like letterheaded papers as well. That's also an advantage, but yes, they should sign it just so that we know that it's from them.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. All right, in the absence of any other questions, thank you all so much for joining. We'll see you at the next one in 2 weeks. Enjoy your long weekend. Bye.